So, you've got a problem. You're in love with your high school rival, not your lab partner, not your cute neighbor. No, no, your rival. The one person who makes your blood boil and your GPA spike. The person you argue with more than you breathe. The person who, on at least 3 occasions, has made you want to throw your textbook, or your dignity, out a window. Yeah, him. Congratulations. You're in for the most frustrating, emotionally exhausting, oddly electric experience of your adolescent life. I say this with love and mild trauma, because I've been there. And somehow, despite all the odds and emotional carnage, he kissed me first. But not before I followed 10 very specific, very dangerous rules that I made up as I went. This is the story of those rules, mistakes included. Let's start with rule number 1. Get under his skin every damn day. If you're not living in his head rent-free, you're doing it wrong. I figured this out during our first week of senior year when I publicly humiliated Liam Taylor in front of the entire school. Not on purpose, obviously. Okay, half on purpose. It was the annual Student Council Assembly. Liam and I were both running for president, again, because apparently our lives were just a never-ending loop of one-upping each other for the sake of prestige and extra credit. He'd prepped this big speech about school unity, academic excellence, and something about raising funds for the theater department. I, however, went last, and I, very calmly, very sweetly, stood up in front of 500 people and exposed his proposal for being copied word for word from a college campaign template I found online. Boom. Mic drop. His jaw clenched. His neck turned pink. He shot me that look. You know the one? Half, I hate you. Half, I'm impressed, you little bastard. And I remember thinking, good. Let it sting. Because when you're trying to make someone fall for you, especially someone as maddeningly perfect and emotionally repressed as Liam Taylor, you don't start with honesty. You start with heat, with tension, with making sure that no matter where he goes, he's thinking about you. I knew I had his attention the moment he cornered me in the hallway afterward. You seriously memorized my entire speech just to roast me? He hissed. I smiled, shrugged. Well, it wasn't your speech, was it? He glared. I smirked. And right there, in the weird silence between his fury and my fake innocence, I saw it. The flicker. Just for a second. He looked at me like he was about to kiss me, or kill me. And honestly, I would have taken either. That was the day I realized it wasn't just rivalry anymore. It was something else. Something dangerous. Something I was stupid enough to want. And so I wrote rule number 1 that night, in red ink at the top of my journal, get under his skin. Every damn day, and God did I. 1 week later. Liam was dating my ex. Yes, my rival, more widely known as my crush, was dating my EX. It was casual, subtle, like he didn't just spend 3 straight days avoiding eye contact after our showdown in the hallway. I found out from Ava during lunch. She leaned in, full of gossip juice energy, and said, "So, Liam and Rachel are a thing now." Cute, right? Rachel, my ex, as in the last person I dated for longer than 3 weeks. The one I broke up with after realizing I spent more time mentally dissecting Liam Taylor's outfits than paying attention to her texts. Cute, I said, chewing my salad like it personally offended me. I played it cool. Coolish. Finished my lunch. Laughed at people's jokes. Even made a spreadsheet for the fall fundraiser like a responsible gay student council VP. But inside, meltdown. Because here's what you need to know about Liam. He doesn't date. Like, ever. Rumor was, he turned down 2 cheerleaders, the soccer team captain, and 1 guy from the art club, who still isn't over it. He was untouchable, aloof, beautifully distant. Until suddenly, he wasn't. Until suddenly, he decided to date my ex. Coincidence? I didn't think so. Which brings us to rule number 2. Watch who he dates. It's about you. Because when it comes to rivals, nothing's an accident. Not the people they sit next to, not the smiles they give in your direction, and definitely not the person they decide to parade around the cafeteria when you're 2 seconds away from emotionally combusting. You'd think I'd confront him. I didn't. Instead, I started keeping track, mentally, like a crime scene board in my head, where they walked, how close they sat, how she looked at him, how he barely looked at her. He held her hand like it was a job. He laughed when she said something, but only after checking to see if I was watching. And I was. God help me, I was. Because Liam wasn't just playing games now, he was targeting me, poking the bear, testing a theory, and I was failing miserably. After school that day, I lingered in the parking lot just long enough to see him kiss her cheek goodbye. It was quick, half-hearted, practiced. She beamed. He glanced at me. Direct, challenging, unapologetic. And I realized he wanted me to see it. Not her, not anyone else, just me. And somehow that hurt worse than anything. I went home and rewrote rule number 2 on the corner of my whiteboard. Watch who he dates. It's never random. It's always about you. And maybe, just maybe, I was about to start fighting back. The next day, I buried myself in everything that looked like work. Debate drills at 7, robotics practice until my hands cramped, extra hours on the senior project, my alumni mentorship app idea, the one I'd sketched out in margins since junior year, the one I'd planned to pitch to the panel next week. If I couldn't control my chest every time Liam smiled at Rachel, I could at least control outcomes, win contests, rack up achievements, be unbearable in the best possible way. So imagine my face when Mr. Hargreaves calls us into his office and slides 2 printed project proposals across the desk like a magician revealing the same rabbit twice. One for Mike, he says without looking up. One for Liam. They were identical enough to make my stomach flip. Same concept, same wireframe, same ridiculous slogan I'd used as a placeholder. I could feel the blood rush to my ears. Did you? I started, because my voice was a blade today. Liam didn't even look surprised. He sat back, uncapped his pen, and said, slow and careful, I needed a good idea. Yours was obvious. Obvious. My jaw went tight. So you copied it, he shrugged. I didn't see it as copying. I saw it as efficient. I'd been efficient. I'd been working on it for months. I'd rehearsed the pitch in the mirror until I hated myself. I exploded. Not loud, but hot. I pointed at the page. Do you have any idea how much work, how much thought went into that? You couldn't even bother to ask. He met me, eyes flat. Maybe I just wanted your attention. The phrase landed like a punch. It was petty and raw, and somehow the most honest thing he'd said since we were 12 and trading insults like currency. For a second, the hallway dissolved. Classroom doors, fluorescent lights, the whole senior year backdrop, and there were only the 2 of us, both standing too close, both breathing like we'd run. I wanted to be furious. I wanted retribution. Instead, I found my fists unclenching and my chest aching with something complicated and new. The realization that whatever game we were playing had mutated into this. A week later. By the end of the week, I had a new habit, sitting in the art room after class with Daniel. He was easy to be around, messy hair, paint-stained fingers, the kind of guy who didn't care if he was late or if his shoes matched. He laughed at everything, including my worst jokes, and for a while it felt good not to be constantly on guard. We'd sit side by side, him sketching, me pretending to read, and it was quiet in a way my life never was when Liam was around. Except, of course, Liam noticed. The first time he saw me with Daniel, he lingered in the doorway too long, muttered something about wasting time, and stormed off. The second time, he cornered me at my locker. So that's your new thing now? Sitting around with him? His tone was sharp, almost mocking. I closed my locker calmly. Maybe. At least he doesn't steal my ideas. His jaw tightened, and for a second, I thought he might actually shove me. The air between us crackled, like we were seconds from crossing a line neither of us could uncross. Then a teacher walked by, and the moment broke. He left without another word. That night, I replayed it over and over. The way he looked at me, the way he almost said something more. It was dangerous, but I couldn't stop myself from leaning into it. The next day, we were in the art room when Daniel caught me staring at the door, half expecting Liam to barge in again. He smirked and shook his head. "You know," he said, shading the corner of his drawing. "He looks at you like he wants you." I blinked. "What?" "Liam, your rival, crush, whatever you call him," Daniel shrugged. "I've seen that look before. It's not hate, it's something else." My throat went dry. I wanted to argue, deny it, laugh it off. Instead, I sat there pretending to read, heart pounding against my ribs like it knew something I didn't want to admit yet. And that's when I wrote it down later that night. Rule number 3, make him jealous, but not obvious. Turns out, jealousy makes the truth slip out when nothing else will. 2 days later, after what Daniel said in the art room, I couldn't stop thinking about it. He looks at you, like he wants you. The words played on repeat in my head, louder than my own thoughts. So, of course, I did something incredibly stupid. I decided to find proof, which is how I ended up crouched in front of Liam Taylor's locker during study hall, glancing over my shoulder like I was about to commit a grand theft. My hands were shaking as I worked the combination. I'd memorized it years ago, back when we used to compete over everything, including who could solve math problems fastest. I told myself it was just curiosity, just research, just confirming Daniel's theory. Inside, it looked normal enough. Textbooks stacked with military precision, football cleats, a spare hoodie, and then, under a folder, sketches, dozens of them, drawings of me. Not caricatures or mean doodles like I expected. Real drawings. Careful, detailed, almost too tender to look at. Me bent over my notes in class. Me laughing in the cafeteria. One of me walking across the field, hair messed up by the wind. And on the corner of one page, in Liam's unmistakable handwriting, he doesn't even know. My chest tightened. My throat felt dry. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. And that's exactly when I heard it. "Enjoying yourself?" I spun around. Liam stood there, arms crossed, face unreadable. My stomach dropped. He didn't let me finish. He just stepped forward, took the sketches from my hands, and shoved them back into the locker, slammed it shut. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, with eyes darker than I'd ever seen. For a moment, I thought he might yell, or laugh, or explain, but he didn't. He just stared, jaw tight, like he was holding back 1,000 words. Then he turned and walked away. No threats, no insults, nothing. The silence hit harder than any fight we'd ever had. That night, I wrote it down. Rule number 4, find out what he's hiding. And maybe, sometimes, wish you hadn't. Later that weekend, after the locker incident, Liam didn't speak to me for 2 full days. No insults in the hallway, no sarcastic comments during class, not even one of those sidelong glares that made me feel both infuriated and alive. And honestly, the silence was worse than any fight. So when Daniel invited me to his friend's party on Saturday night, I said yes, partly because I needed a distraction, mostly because I wanted Liam to know I had one. The party was the usual. Loud music, bad lighting, red cups. Daniel stuck close to me, easy and carefree like always. He had paint smudges on his wrist even here, like art followed him everywhere. And when he laughed at something I said, it felt good. Too good. That's when I saw him. Liam. Leaning against the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, watching me. The moment our eyes met, my heart kicked hard against my ribs. He looked at me the way he had when I was caught with those sketches. Angry, hurt, something else he couldn't say out loud, so I did something reckless. I leaned in and kissed Daniel. It wasn't long, it wasn't deep, just enough. Enough for Liam to see, and he did. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickered. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out. The music kept playing. People kept talking. Daniel smiled at me like nothing had just shattered in the room. But my stomach dropped straight to the floor because I hadn't kissed Daniel for me. I'd kissed him for Liam. And instead of proving anything, it felt like I'd just lit a match to everything between us. The next week, the fallout came quick. On Monday, Liam didn't show up for the school paper meeting. He was supposed to edit the sports section, and he never missed. People asked where he was. I shrugged, pretending I didn't care. By Wednesday, he skipped prom planning too. That was even weirder. He lived for bossing committees around. I sat through the whole meeting, half listening to decorations talk, half staring at the empty chair across from me. By Friday, I realized what I'd done. I hadn't just kissed Daniel. I'd pushed Liam away, hard, and maybe for good. That night, sitting at my desk, I stared at the whiteboard where I'd written all my rules. My marker hovered for a long time before I finally scrawled it down. Rule number 5, kiss someone else first. And then, underneath it, smaller, almost like a confession, but don't do it out of spite. You'll regret it, because I did, more than I wanted to admit. The following week, by Monday, the silence between Liam and me had stretched into something unbearable. He still wasn't showing up for the paper or prom planning, and every empty chair he left behind felt like a reminder of the party, the kiss, the way his eyes looked right before he walked out. I couldn't shake it, couldn't focus, couldn't pretend I didn't care. So I did the only stupidly dramatic thing I could think of. I wrote an editorial. It was supposed to be about school spirit, homecoming week, pep rallies, the usual filler junk. Instead, I poured myself into it. Not names, not details, just truth wrapped in metaphor. I wrote about rivalries, how sometimes they're just excuses for paying attention to someone you can't ignore. About competition, how it hides what you really feel. About mistakes, like kissing the wrong person just to prove you don't care when you actually do. And I ended it with this line: sometimes an apology matters more than who was right or wrong. Sometimes you just don't want to lose the person who makes even losing feel like winning. Corny? Yeah, but it was the closest I'd ever come to saying the words out loud. By Tuesday morning, the paper was out. By third period, people were whispering in the hallways. By lunch, Ava cornered me and said, "So that was about Liam, right?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Then, halfway through chemistry, my phone buzzed. A text. From him. Liam. "Meet me at the stadium, after school." My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. An hour later, the stadium was empty when I got there, the bleachers casting long shadows across the field. He was waiting, sitting on the bottom row, elbows on his knees. For a second, I almost turned back, but then he looked up. "Nice article," he said, voice flat. I swallowed. "You read it?" Hard not to when half the school keeps asking if it's about me. My laugh came out shaky. Well, it was. He stared at me, and for once, I didn't look away. The silence stretched. Heavy, but not the unbearable kind this time. The kind that felt like it might break open into something else. "I shouldn't have gone through your locker," I blurted, "or kissed Daniel, or basically anything I've done in the past month." His mouth twitched, half a smile, half disbelief. "You think you're the only one who messed up?" I blinked. "Am I not?" He shook his head, looking down at his hands. "You don't get it. I wasn't dating Rachel. Not really. I just wanted to see if you'd notice. And when you did, it was like proof. Proof of what?" His eyes met mine, sharp and unflinching. "That you cared." And in that moment, every unspoken word between us finally had a voice. That's when I came up with rule number 6. Apologize first even when you're right. And that's what I did. I apologized because I couldn't be more wrong. 3 days later. After the stadium talk, Liam didn't say much else. He just stood, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked me home like nothing monumental had happened. No kiss, no dramatic declaration, just quiet steps and the sound of our sneakers on the pavement. And then for the next 3 days, silence. Again. But this time, it wasn't the same empty silence as before. It was heavier, loaded, the kind of silence where you knew someone was thinking about you, even if they weren't saying it. By Friday night, I couldn't stand it. Ava dragged me to the fall carnival, the one with string lights draped across the football field, and the Ferris wheel creaking like it might collapse at any second. She ditched me 5 minutes in to chase funnel cake, and I ended up leaning against the railing near the dunk tank, scrolling my phone like I had somewhere better to be. Bored already? I didn't have to look up. His voice hit me in the chest before my brain even registered it. Liam. He was holding a soda, wearing that smug smirk that never quite reached his eyes. But this time, the edges looked softer, tired almost. Carnivals aren't really my thing, I said, pocketing my phone. So why'd you come? I shrugged. Guess I was hoping you'd be here. That shut him up. For once. We walked together along the edge of the field, past couples holding hands and kids screaming from the rides. He didn't say anything, and I didn't push. The silence wasn't awkward this time. It felt like waiting. Finally, he stopped near the row of food trucks, lights reflecting in his eyes. You make me crazy, he said suddenly, voice low, like he'd been holding it back all week. You always have. I blinked. That's good crazy or restraining order crazy? He huffed a laugh, shaking his head. Both. My chest tightened. This was it, I thought. He was going to kiss me. Every nerve in my body braced for it, but he didn't. Instead, he reached down and slid his hand into mine, just like that. No hesitation, no build-up, just warm fingers lacing with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And God, somehow, it was more intimate than any kiss could have been. My pulse went wild. I stared at our hands, then at him, but he was looking straight ahead like it wasn't a big deal, like he hadn't just set fire to every single nerve ending in my body. We stood there for a while, the noise of the carnival fading around us. Just two idiots in the middle of the chaos, holding hands like the world wasn't watching. Eventually, he said, "Don't overthink this." Me? I laughed weakly. I never overthink anything. His lips twitched. Liar. But he didn't let go. And in that moment, I understood something important. Sometimes the rule isn't about what you do. Sometimes it's about giving him the space to do it first. Which is why I wrote it down later that night, in all caps, across my whiteboard. Rule number 7. Let him touch you first. Because trust me, when he finally does, it'll be better than anything you planned. The following Monday. I should have known it wouldn't stay secret. High school has a way of sniffing out anything you'd rather keep locked in a box. By Monday morning, the whispers had already spread. The drawings, Liam's drawings, had somehow made their way onto the cafeteria tables, photocopied and passed around like trading cards. Every single one was of me, laughing, writing, even just sitting at my desk. In the margins, words like bright and infuriating were scribbled in his messy handwriting. And just like that, the school had its newest scandal. By third period, people were saying Liam Taylor was obsessed with me. By fourth, they were laughing that he must be gay. By lunch, he was gone. His seat in chem was empty. His locker stayed shut. And when I texted him, "Where are you?" the dots blinked for 3 seconds, then disappeared. I knew he was retreating, shutting down, doing what Liam always did when the world got too close. So I did something reckless. Again. When Ava cornered me, wide-eyed and whispering, "Those were his, weren't they?" I shook my head. No, I said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. They're mine. She blinked. What? They're self-portraits, I said quickly. I've been practicing. The captions were, notes to myself. By 7th period, the rumor had flipped. Now people were whispering that I was a narcissist, obsessed with sketching my own face and scribbling dramatic little affirmations in the margins. Pathetic? Sure. Embarrassing? Completely. But at least the heat was on me now, not him. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Liam, meet me. Stadium. Now. He was waiting under the bleachers, hoodie pulled low, hands shoved deep in his pockets. His eyes burned when he saw me. You're insane, he said. I forced a laugh. Takes one to know one. He didn't smile. Why would you do that? Why would you make yourself look like that? Because I couldn't watch them tear you apart, I said, sharper than I meant. Because you don't deserve it. Because you... I broke off, heart hammering. Because I care, okay? More than I should, his jaw clenched. For a second, I thought he'd walk away again. But instead, he stepped closer, closing the space until his breath brushed my cheek. You make me crazy, he whispered. Rough, messy. And then, finally, he kissed me. Not soft, not hesitant, explosive. Like weeks of fighting and staring and pretending boiled over all at once. I froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed him back, fists gripping his hoodie like I might fall without him. The world tilted. The noise in my head went silent. When he pulled back, breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. You didn't have to protect me, he said quietly. Yeah, I whispered. But I wanted to. For once, he didn't argue. He just kissed me again, slower this time, like he was memorizing it. And that's when I knew my rule number. 8. Take the hit so he doesn't have to. It wasn't just about survival. It was about love. Because sometimes you take the hit, not because you have to, but because he's worth it. A few days later, after the stadium kiss, nothing was the same. In the hallways, we didn't ignore each other anymore. Not exactly. Our conversations were shorter, quieter, full of glances that burned more than words ever could. And yet, when people looked at him too long, when whispers of gay drifted through the cafeteria, Liam still froze. One afternoon, I caught him in the library, slouched behind a stack of books like he was hiding from the world. I don't get it, I said. You'll kiss me under the bleachers, but the second someone suspects, you disappear. He shut his book, eyes tight. Because they don't get to decide who I am. Then tell me who you are. His jaw clenched, then softer. I don't know yet. All I know is I like you. I've always liked you. But when they say I'm gay, it feels like they're trying to lock me in a box before I've even had the chance to figure it out myself. And just like that, I understood. He wasn't ashamed of me. He wasn't ashamed of us. He was terrified of being labeled before he was ready. So I decided I'd wait. And when the moment came, I'd be the one to push just enough. So he could. Finish it himself. A week later, prom night glittered with fairy lights and cheap confetti. Couples twirled across the gym floor in pastel dresses and stiff tuxes. I spent most of it leaning against the punch table, trying not to look like I was scanning the crowd for Liam. Then he walked in. Black suit. No tie, like he couldn't be bothered to play by the same rules as everyone else. My heart thudded. Before I could second-guess myself, I crossed the room and stopped in front of him. Dance with me, I said. His eyes darted to the crowd, then back to me. Panic flickered there. Here? In front of everyone? Are you sure? He asked, voice cracking just slightly. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I've never been more sure. For a moment, the music drowned out everything else. The whispers, the stares, the fear. I just held out my hand. And finally, he took it. We swayed in the middle of the gym, awkward at first, like two puzzle pieces trying to fit. But then his hand steadied on my waist, and my chest pressed against his, and the rest of the world just disappeared. People were staring, phones were probably out, but it didn't matter, because then he leaned in, no hesitation, no hiding, and kissed me. A real kiss. Public. Lasting. The kind you couldn't mistake for anything but what it was. When we broke apart, he was smiling. Really smiling for once. "Guess I finished it," he whispered. I grinned back, heart soaring. "Yeah, you did, and that's why rule number 9 matters. Make the first move, but let him finish it. Because sometimes, love isn't about dragging someone into the light. It's about standing there, holding out your hand until they're ready to step in on their own." 1 year later. College feels different. Bigger, louder, harder. Liam's in Boston studying architecture. I'm 3 hours away chasing journalism. Our campuses might as well be planets sometimes. Different schedules, different stress, different lives. But every Friday night, without fail, one of us gets on a bus. And for 2 days, we close the distance. It's not easy. There are weeks where FaceTime is all we get. Nights when papers and projects pile too high, and we fall asleep with unread texts on our screens. But somehow the space between us doesn't scare me anymore. Not the way it used to. Because here's the thing. Back in high school, everything between us was a competition. Every test score, every election, every sideways glance in the hallway. It all felt like points on some invisible scoreboard. He beat me in chemistry, I won in debate. He snagged the higher GPA, I planned the better fundraiser. And for years, I thought that was love. The chase, the tension, the need to outdo him, just to make him look my way. Turns out, I was wrong. Last weekend, I woke up in Liam's too small dorm bed, sunlight leaking through broken blinds, his arm thrown heavy over my waist. He was still half asleep, hair sticking up in a dozen directions, mumbling something about coffee. And I realized I didn't care who won anymore, because with him there, breathing steady beside me, I'd already won. That's why rule number 10 is the last one, the only one that really matters. Stop keeping score. You've already won. Love isn't about points, it's about presence. So yeah, maybe I broke my own game. Maybe I fell for my high school rival when I was supposed to just beat him. Maybe I kissed him when I should have kept my guard up. Maybe I risked too much, too fast, too often. But every risk brought me here, to him. And as I write this final rule, sitting in a noisy campus cafe with Liam's hoodie draped over my shoulders and his last text buzzing on my phone. Next bus leaves at 6. Can't wait to see you. I know the truth. The rules were never really about winning him. They were about finding the courage to stop fighting what was always there. So if you've read this far, maybe you're like me. Maybe you've got a rival who makes your pulse race and your stomach flip, someone you can't stop watching even when they drive you insane. If that's the case, here's the secret. Forget the scoreboard. Forget the rivalry. Forget the rules. Because the only one that matters is the one I broke, falling for him in the first place. But I couldn't be happier, 'cause falling for him was the best thing that ever happened to me. The end. Have you ever fallen for your rival? What was your experience like? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to become part of our Rainbow Force and consider joining our membership for early access and exclusive content. Stay wholesome.